Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you all. We have more than 1,000 registered attendees from so many time zones. Hi, my name is Mojgan Amini. I'm the Senior Director of Process Management and Continuous Improvement here at UC San Diego, which means I get to stick my fingers into all sorts of fun process improvement and AI efforts across the campus. First off, I'd like to thank our gracious sponsors for making this webinar and the main event, Palooza 2024, possible. In case you didn't know, Palooza is an annual continuous improvement extravaganza hosted at UC San Diego. This year, we've added this particular webinar, dubbed PaloozAI with an AI at the end, in order to get a taste of how AI fits into the continuous improvement landscape. When I say get a taste, I mean it. There's so much packed into these 90 minutes, and we hope to use it as a starting point for continued conversations with you all. Before I introduce today's moderator, there's a bit of webinar housekeeping to go over. Closed captioning is turned on and available for anyone who wishes to use it. Please submit any of your questions throughout the webinar via the QA module located at the bottom of your screen. Now, we can't guarantee we'll get to all the questions, but we'll do our best. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the Palooza website by the end of the week. And lastly, please give us your feedback by completing the brief survey that will pop up at the end of this webinar. Feedback is always appreciated. Now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our moderator, my colleague and friend, Stephen Yorkstone. Stephen is an excellent expert lean consultant and lean coach at Edinburgh Napier University, and he's joining us from Edinburgh, Scotland. He's an award-winning author, contributor, and to multiple books about lean management, lean in higher education, and the list goes on. He's also the co-founder of the Lean in Higher Education Global Community. Stephen, take it away.
I'm so nervous and so excited to be here with so many people from all around the world. It blows my mind how cool it is. And I love AI and like the excitement that there is around it. And I'm really looking forward to diving into that with you all today. I also love continuous improvement and lean and Six Sigma. And we're going to see how those things go together in the context of the amazing experience that we have at UCSD and some experts. So, quick rundown of the program. We're going to start with a keynote address from an amazing keynote speaker. I'll introduce him in just a moment. We're going to have a panel discussion featuring 4 UC San Diego leaders talking about how they apply innovative AI in HR, administrative, academic, and healthcare areas, not just improving processes, but enhancing how things work for colleagues, for students, patients, and for customers. So that's going to be really cool diving into that. Then we're going to have a look at UC San Diego's new generative AI platform, Triton GPT. I'm exceptionally jealous. We do not have such a thing in my university, so I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how that looks in practice. And along the way, as Mojgan says, we'll do our best to answer all the questions in the Q&A module. I think there's been like over 100 questions submitted so far, so we'll do our best to answer those, and we've got some experts in Triton GPT on the line, poised and ready, so challenge them if you dare. Finally, we'll wrap some things up by sharing about the Process Palooza information to continue the conversation, because of course, this is part of the build-up to an amazing Process Palooza that we'll see in just up there. There we go, Process Palooza. Nice. Okay, so my first job, and it is an absolute pleasure, is to introduce Neil Sahota. So Neil is an IBM Master Inventor, United Nations Artificial Intelligence Advisor, Executive Director, Chief Innovation Officer, and he lectures at UC Irvine School of Law. So he knows the law as well as AI, which is doubly intimidating. He's authored the best-selling book, Own the AI Revolution, and he works to inspire clients and businesses to foster innovation and develop the next generation solutions powered by AI. So I couldn't hear you clap, but I imagine you will be clapping as we welcome our keynote speaker presenting on hyperchange, the opportunity for growth. Neil, welcome. Over to you.
Hey, thanks, David. Appreciate the great introduction, and really excited to be here with everybody. So if we let's go ahead and kick it off with the next slide. So I'm really proud to be able to kind of tee off this conversation during the webinar today. So I want to tease out a few concepts for us, kind of set the table for the larger discussion. And I thought I'd share this graphic, and I know it's incredibly hard to read, but it's essentially the history, the timeline of human technology. And there's just two key points I want to make out here. First, about 1 million years ago, we figured out how to use fire for cooking. But we didn't really discover or invent agriculture until about 9,000 BCE. So there was a huge time gap here. But you can see based on this chart how long it takes us to figure stuff out. However, you notice that in the last few decades here, we've seen a huge amount of change actually emerge. And go to the next slide. We're living in a time of what we started to call hyperchange. That effectively we're experiencing about 100 years worth of change in the next 10 years. So if you think about it, AI has triggered what they call the fourth industrial revolution. We're already just 13 years into this AI industrial revolution, and already it's done more work, more change than the first three industrial revolutions combined. So that's the rate of change and the level of impact that's going on today. And well, it's not going to slow down. Everyone's starting to think it's probably going to pick up just based on how quickly things are evolving. So we go to the next slide, please. Just want to start off with a few stats, got to do a little academic in me. But by the end of this decade, no secret, AI and robotics will contribute about $15 trillion to the global GDP. We're living in a 5-year cycle right now where we were expecting, we've already started to see that 85 million jobs will be supplanted by automated machines. At the end of 2022, halfway through this cycle, 30% of all tasks are actually already done by machines. By the end of 2025, we estimate it'll be at least 50%. It's not all gloom and doom, though, here. As we know, with any kind of change and revolution, there will be new types of jobs. We've already seen some of these start to emerge. So that at the same time period, 85 million jobs will get supplanted, 79 million jobs will actually get created. We're also living in this time right here where next 3 years, we're seeing about 120 million global workers that will need retraining because of AI's impact. 11.5 million of them in the US. Here's probably the scariest part for most of us is that even the world's most advanced cities isn't ready for this level of change, and it's already here, and it's happening quite rapidly. However, I believe that every threat is also an opportunity. So if we go to the next slide, there are ways for us to figure out how to improve the way we work, our businesses, our industries to create more value, but not necessarily just replace all humans with robots. I think a great example is H&R Block. So about 10 years ago, I was working with them. I don't know if anyone out there has ever tried to read any of the tax codes. If you ever have insomnia, it's a great cure. But H&R Block was wondering, could AI help them with tax preparation? And the great thing is that AI systems remember everything they read, see, hear, experience, do. And so you can actually feed all the tax code from the national or federal level, the state to the municipal levels. And the other thing we learned is, at least in the United States, about 70 to 75% of tax returns are fairly standardized. There's not a whole lot of, one-offs or specializations about them. So very ripe for AI. So we built a system to help prepare tax returns for people. They would actually feed it in. The AI would ask for information. When it generated tax returns, there would be a human accountant that would do a quick review, and it worked like a charm. One interesting thing we noticed, though, is that when the AI was preparing tax returns, the average tax refund was about $237 higher, and the people getting more money back. So we're kind of wondering, why is that happening? And what we learned is because it knew the tax code so well, it knew about these like deductions like, oh yeah, you could claim $25 here, there's a $15 credit here. Most of us wouldn't have recognized, not even experienced accountants. So that kind of shows you the power that AI has that can take this data and all the information that we have out there and synthesize that and find those small additional nuggets of value. Go to the next slide. And that was great. And my work with AI, that's what a lot of the initial focus was. It was around automation. And that's what we're used to with computers, doing something faster, cheaper, less errors. However, we're really only tapping into about 20 to 30% of the value from artificial intelligence. We call it the third generation of computing with good reason because it has whole new capabilities that people aren't necessarily used to. It's like you have your toolbox and you got your hammer, you got your screwdriver, but you have this like weird widget thingy, like no one's seen this before. You don't really know how to apply it. That's the real challenge that we have because the real value, the full potential can be unlocked through innovation, which is really finding a different way, changing the process or system to the work better. Now, I know innovation is a word that gets thrown out a lot. We can go to the next slide. I want to share an example with you. So we're going to play a short video here, not much audio, but just watch what this gentleman is doing. So we play the video.
Cool. You want to see? Want to do some wrist movement? Sure.
So somehow he's controlling this with his mind, right? And that's actually what he is doing. And we know that if you are born without a limb or you lose it in an accident, the brain can still send signals like a phantom hand. So as technologists, we're thinking, great, we'll drill a hole in his head, put a computer chip in there to go to his brain waves, transfer it to the robotic arm. Unfortunately, AI can only do what we've trained it to do, and we don't understand the brain well enough to teach it about brain waves. This is not Neuralink or anything like that. And in a testament to really where innovation and the most successful AI solutions come from, they really come from the domain experts that understand this. And so we actually worked with doctors and clinical researchers. What they actually help us understand is that when the brain sends the signal to the phantom hand, it really triggers a process in our body. And part of that process is muscle and tendon motion. So if you look above his right elbow there, you see this black band? It's an IoT, Internet of Things sensor array, and it's designed to capture that muscle and tendon motion. That we can decode and that we can translate and teach to an AI system. When those signals get sent, capture that motion and replicate it in the arm. So we found a different way of restoring motion. So as you saw, you can raise it, you can make a fist, you can shake hands. Actually, today you can actually play tennis with the arm. So we've been able to restore a level of mobility. We didn't like just automate how we thought things work. We've tried to find a different way of reproducing mobility. That's a good example of innovation. We go to the next slide. Right. Sorry to gross some people out here, depending on when you last ate, but this is what we call a smart toilet. And what we're really doing here, as well as humans, we all produce waste. Waste contains very important information about our health. And so, because we produce waste hopefully every day, they can actually capture a lot of information on us and set a pretty precise baseline on our health. So as things happen, maybe we have a very early onset of illness or disease, and we don't even realize it ourselves. The AI can actually detect in our biomarkers very, very subtle deviations. If it sees that, flag it for a human physician or healthcare worker to review and say, okay, do we have early onset of something? Because we know the earlier we can detect disease or illness, the more likely we can successfully treat it. That's the level and power of AI, different way of trying to approach preventive healthcare. Go to the next slide, please. And this is really a good example of where we're moving to. So second key point here, this is not human versus machine. It's really human and machine working together, what we call hybrid intelligence. So we as people have a lot of strengths, our creativity, our intuition, our ability to handle first of a kind situations are powerful things that AI does not do well. Conversely, no secret, AI systems can crunch millions upon millions of variables in seconds and have eidetic memories. So what we really want to do is take our own human capabilities and augment them with the machine abilities. This is what we would call hybrid intelligence. We can go to the next slide. You can actually see a great example of that in the legal system. So my apologies to anyone who works in legal services, but it's the second slowest moving industry I've ever seen. But they've gone all in on AI and automation, now improvement the last 3 years. And what normally we all think about is like legal operations. So we have great tools for research, case management, case rules, all these things. But we're starting to see more kind of innovation unleashed. So there's actually a startup company in Southern California called Legalmation, started by 3 lawyers, no technical knowledge. And I just remember having lunch with them and they were asking like what the big thing with AI was. And so we started talking about it. Said AI is good at some tedious things, repetitive stuff, things with a little variation. You want to think about more than just trying to automate what's already out there. If it has problems, can you improve that? What they actually wound up doing is developing essentially an AI assistant associate lawyer. So someone has a complaint, they file a complaint against you, a lawsuit. Normally, a 3-year associate lawyer will read the complaint, generate the corresponding court documents, maybe might generate a counter complaint, start deposition questions, start initial case research, do other things. It takes about on average 10 to 12 hours to do. Their AI system does it in 2 minutes. So it does all that work, still about 30 minutes, a human lawyer reviews it to make sure everything looks okay, or again, flag something or correct it if needed. But the reason I call this out is you're probably wondering why there's a chicken on this slide, right? You look at the upper right-hand corner. That's because one of their clients is actually Walmart. And a couple of years ago, they actually had a case where a guy, ironically a dentist, sued Walmart, bought a chicken, tried to bite the gizzard, chipped his tooth on a stone, so he sued for damages. Normally, Walmart would probably settle out of court. I don't know for how much money, a few tens of thousands of dollars, maybe. Now that they're using AI assistant associate lawyer, it does all this work. And part of what it actually came back and formulating case strategy, it's actually said that it's a material fact that when chickens eat, they eat stones and they get stored in the gizzard. That argument won Walmart the case. They didn't have to pay any damages. In fact, they got reimbursed for their own legal fees. That's a great example of showing you the power of AI, but the need for hybrid intelligence, because the AI obviously can't argue this in court. But if lawyers can do that, imagine what we can do in our own organizations. Go to the next slide. This leads me to my last point, which is we're trying to move into what we're starting the world of we call convergence. You have lots of emerging technologies out there, AI, IoT, the metaverse, and we have these really lofty goals like smart cities, precision healthcare, circular economy. What we're learning is we can actually stack these technologies together to actually achieve these big goals. So if you go to the next slide, one of the big things, and this is actually happening, some work we're doing right now in San Diego, is that we found the convergence of AI, the metaverse, and cognitive science to actually clone expertise and teach people even the squishy skills like creative thinking. So cognitive science, because it's a better way, there are better ways to wire our brains for learning, accelerate learning, train knowledge, understand at a deeper level. AI to replicate all the real world scenarios and events, and the metaverse to essentially create a digital twin. So we can do this in a risk-free environment. So if we go to the next slide, doing this, we've actually been able to pioneer sustainable mining standards. We've been able to help people with mental health issues, like Gen Zers who are struggling with interviews, or soldiers or sailors trying to transition back to civilian life. actually build their coping skills and resilience so that they can, when there's a triggering situation, have a better way of dealing with this. What we found is that people who actually go through this, they enter that kind of flow state faster. Their thinking processes are much more developed. They think more creatively, even outside of the scenarios they go through. So this is actually something that's sustained learning, sustained kind of cognitive abilities. And that's not something we thought would be possible even 10 years ago. So AI may actually be a way for us to teach creative thinking. Go to the next slide. So just a few best practices to summarize. Innovation over automation, find a different way of doing the work. This has got to be business-led, not IT. There's a lot of smart technologists. They often don't know your detailed pain points. So domain experts understand the capabilities and look up. Second, hybrid intelligence. So this is not human versus AI. Remember, this is about complementing our own human abilities with the machine abilities, and then convergence. Think about interconnecting. So over that modular thinking, how we can stack these technologies to accomplish big goals. This all depends on IoT, which creates data, and AI as the foundation for these convergent solutions. Go to the next slide. So we all know that putting the lights on won't keep you safe. What works today is probably not going to work in the near future. Remember, hyperchange. So don't think about trying to fix something that's not broken. Make this really about, is there a better way of doing the work? Right? That's what really process improvement's all about. Let's go to the next slide. So I appreciate that. I know we're going to try and get to everyone's questions. If we don't, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer. I know we have a lot of people, answer whatever I can. There's a contact form on my website. Everyone always asks me if there are any good resources to stay abreast of the latest information and trends within industry. I do publish a lot of this information on social media and my website. I do write for Forbes, so you can always check that out. But there's also a great LinkedIn newsletter called Disrupting the Box that has a lot of great information around this. And, just if you have 30 seconds to spare, scan that QR code. I would always appreciate feedback. Take you no more than 30 seconds to fill out, because I'm always looking to figure out how I can share information better with everybody. And with that, I thank everyone for your time. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Neil. I mean, it's so cool to get a sense of where AI is going, and a little bit scary. I think it's kind of like, well, what does this mean for us? And that's kind of why we've got the panel discussion, to take this to a next level of detail. So I'm going to thank you first, Neil, for that amazing presentation, but also invite our panelists to come and join me on camera now as we dive into how this works for a little bit closer to home, thinking kind of how changes are being made in UCSD and our part of the world here. I'll start introducing our panelists as they start turning on their cameras. I can see we've been joined by Dr. Gabriel Wardy. Hello, Dr. Gabriel. Associate Professor and Chief Division of Critical Care in the Department of Emergency Medicine, UC San Diego. So if you rush off, I'll know there's been an emergency and we won't hold you to it. We're also joined by Laura Pradenas, the Assistant Vice Chancellor and Chief of Staff, the Chief Financial Officer, UC San Diego, and Lean Sigma Black Belt. So I'm going to make sure I sit up straight, fill in all my financial forms and make sure everything's done properly, Laura. We're also joined by Dan Suki. He's the Senior Director of the Educational Technology Services at UC San Diego. He's a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Beautiful color of a belt. I love a belt. And we're also joined by Terry Winbush, who's the Chief Human Resources Officer here at the UC San Diego campus. And if you know Terry, you'll know that she'll have something fun to say. I don't doubt it. Okay, so we've got about half an hour for the panel discussion, so we're going to dive right into the meat. Let's start with what's a practical example of applying AI in your area that you're really excited about. And I guess, Dr. Wardy, let's go with you. What are you really excited about in your area?
Yeah, so I think one thing that by background, one of the hats I wear at UC San Diego is I run our hospital sepsis program. And I know that many of you are not in healthcare, and when you hear sepsis, you might have some vague notions of what it is. But probably the best way to think about it is a dysregulated host response to infection. And you're probably saying, well, what exactly does that mean? And I think that's part of the point, is that sepsis is an inherently nebulous and heterogeneous condition that we know causes a lot of harm to patients both in the United States and globally too. And so one thing that I've been really excited about is over the past 4 years or so is we've been developing a deep learning model to predict sepsis about 4 to 6 hours or so before it becomes evident to our providers in the emergency department. We're not the only ones that have been developing this, but we're actually the first group that has gone forward and actually showed that implementing a deep learning model to predict sepsis was able not only to improve processes of care that we check, but also result in a significant improvement in patient survival. And just to give some numbers with that, I think since ultimately what patients care about when they come to the emergency department is are they going to survive or not? We were able to show about a 17% decrease in a relative decrease in mortality from sepsis after we went live with our deep learning model to predict sepsis ahead of time, which translates to, on average, about 5 patient lives a month that were saved after we went live with this model. So for me, having studied sepsis for the past decade, this is a tremendous advance and very, very exciting to see how we are able to take an AI application, bring it to the bedside, get buy-in from our staff in the emergency department, and then actually show we improved outcomes with it. So it's something, again, I think it's a really cool application, and we're continuing to expand on what we've done.
So what you're saying is that because of AI and the sepsis program, there's about an extra person a week walking around because of how this has worked out. That's really cool. That's really cool. Let's bring it a little bit closer to what's closer to work in AI in the university. So, Laura, why don't you join us on the stage and tell us a little bit about what's exciting for you and in your kind of area.
Absolutely, and it's not life or death, so tough one to follow. But I am really excited because we are launching an AI assistant called Fund Manager Coach. And just a little bit of background. So we rolled out a new finance system a few years ago. And it's been just real talk. It's been tough, right? It's tough to roll out these big systems. We have lots of different fund managers across the campus, over 400 actually on our campus. And they've been trying to find information as we've rolled out this system, about new processes and best practices. And it can be really tough in a large organization to do that. And so with this AI assistant, we are really hoping to gain some efficiencies by making information more easily available, right? Getting answers faster, which is just really exciting. The assistant itself will be housed in our Triton GPT tool. So we can train it, and we've been training it the last few months on our own UC San Diego financial processes, so that when the fund managers go in, they'll be able to get real-time answers to their questions, or at least get directed to information faster. So we're launching the first version in April, so keep your fingers crossed for us. We're very excited. Just bear in mind, it'll be the first of many iterations, because just as the smartphone in your hand today is not the first smartphone that you purchased, right? So these things change and evolve over time. So we're really excited to just get something launched and just start experimenting with it.
I was thinking about you as Neil was saying his robots can make doing tax returns easier. It sounds to me like this is kind of that. And I'm all about those marginal gains. And if we're able to make processes a little bit easier for a lot of people, it really is kind of transformational. Talking of transformational, now Terry, come and join us. What are you excited about? How are you using AI? What have you got to share with us today?
Well, what am I not excited about? I think is the better question, but I'll refine my comments at the time that y'all have allotted to me. So, this is probably not maybe the most normal for what you would expect from your chief HR officer, but I spend so much time on my personal time on the weekends playing with AI with our Triton GPT that we have locally here at UC San Diego. Whoop, whoop. And within our Triton GPT, we have a JD helper. So let me break down this brainchild. So everyone on the planet really loves writing job descriptions. Okay, said no one ever, right? And so what we have in our amazing technological geniuses on our campus have partnered with all of us to create is a space where people can go in and they can present information that we have in our career track standards and all the things that were created, you know, in the behemoth of the UC system. And then say what they really want the job to do. And it helped them to A, write the position overview, but B, help them figure out interview questions, and C, what they should actually post for the job. Because you should never post a super boring job description that will not get the people super interested in coming to work for you. You should talk about how excited you are about the role that you're hiring for and what it will actually do at the job. And then people will want to come there and do the thing and be amazing and innovate and create and, join Process Palooza and take over the world. And so what we've done is streamline that through our JD helper, right? And given people their lives back. So it would take my HR person and me weeks, sometimes months, I will admit, to put together job descriptions and prepare for recruitments because I have a million other things to do, right? We all do. But with the help of JD helper and things of that nature, we were able to knock out multiple recruitments in total from soup to nuts. And then it was just a function of scheduling and getting it actually posted and reviewing and curating the actual applicants. But all of the prep work we did in 2 hours as opposed to months. It gave me my life back. Now I don't dread figuring out what a new position should look like and what we need for the world. So I'm excited about all of it. I'm excited about making my emails more succinct. I'm excited about making my emails more nice and deferential and empathetic. I'm excited about all the things that our AI tools can assist with. So I'm excited about all the things, Stephen.
I don't believe you write emails that aren't nice. Although maybe there's got to be a hard side to hate. Discipline, that's what it's about. Hey, Terry, but I think where I'm sit, I do talk with a lot of lean people, right? And they talk about because I can picture that time that those staff have saved in doing those JDs, being released to do more value add stuff, right? Cool. But I also then think about, well, what do universities here really for? And I think like teaching and learning, right? That's our fundament, that's our bread and butter. That's what it's about. So Dan, come on. From where you sit, what's your position? What are you excited about in terms of lean AI and kind of learning and teaching and all that kind of stuff?
Well, first off, thanks, Stephen. And thanks to the nearly 1,000 colleagues in the webinar today. Really excited to be here with you. I'm super, like Terry and Laura and Dr. Gabe, I'm super excited about AI and the potential here. I want to start off by saying, though, AI is not necessarily a new thing in the teaching and learning space. It's been in place for several years now, mainly to do things like help with grading, auto grading for like math and coding assignments and that sort of thing, and to make overall course management easier. So those of you that teach, and I'm sure there's quite a few of you here that do teach, know that you spend a lot of your time not necessarily teaching, but do things like grading or managing teaching assistants who help you grade. So AI has really helped instructors really focus on their teaching. But what is new, though, is the advent of generative AI. And really, it's got this amazing potential to impact student learning directly and significantly. So, for example, our team has, for the past, at this point, it's probably been over a year now, we've been conducting AI pilots. And I want to preface this by saying we do these pilots in a very secure and data privacy secure manner. I always have to preface that, right? Because that's definitely a big concern, especially in the teaching and learning space. We have a lot of sensitive data. But we've been running these pilots, basically doing things like, with willing instructors, we take some of their lecture capture. So I'm speaking about things like their video and their audio of the things they're actually teaching in a classroom. We take that and we can generate these really amazing summaries of each study session or of each class session. We can do things like do summaries, we can do study guides. And so allow students like new ways to interact with content. It gives them a leg up before a test. It lets them really pull out the key highlights of a lecture and really speaks to the learning objectives of a course. So it's really this generative AI, flavor AI that I'm really stoked about. And I think it's going to directly impact, I've already seen it directly impact student learning.
Okay, now time is going, and we've got half an hour for this discussion and lots that we could go into. Let's dive into challenges. And can I invite the panel to be succinct because we're running a little bit past. But Laura, what's the biggest challenge you've experienced? Is there anything that you lie awake worrying about when it comes to AI?
You want me to be succinct on the challenges question? That's a tough one. Okay, but I will try. So, once people discover the power of AI tools, there's a really strong urge to apply them to everything, to all the processes, right? And while I love that, because being from a process improvement background, I also want to make all the things faster. It's very exciting. But we have to kind of go back to the basics with this, and we have to ask ourselves, is this process or task, should it actually be AI enabled in the first place? And some of you may know this, but right now, many of the industry AI tools consume a lot of natural resources. And so you might have heard every time you ask AI a question, it's equivalent to dumping a bottle of water on the ground because that's how much water it takes to cool this hardware down. Those are things that are very concerning when we think of as a university, our sustainability goals, right? Being able to keep those front and center as we launch and build these tools. We also have to really think about centering the knowledge worker so that they feel comfortable with embedding these AI tools. And really, as they look at the final product, they can apply their critical thinking and review it for bias and inaccuracy. Because like I said, these are going to be iterative, right? We're going to build on them. So the first answers may not be perfect. And we have to be able to discern, is that kind of a biased answer? Is that answer not quite right? I need to do a little more research. So I'll just say that one of the ways that we can try and mitigate some of these challenges is by building in the proper governance structures and bringing these to the forefront, making sure it's front and center, that we're looking at what are our values. The fact that we're building Triton GPT in partnership with our supercomputer center on campus means that our values as a university are already built into the process of developing this tool and making sure we have control of our data, that we're making sure that we don't compromise our values for the sake of efficiency.
Makes a lot of sense. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, so just to echo Laura read it at the top, her comment. So I think, in my challenge, and it's something I think for us all to think about is, that AI is moving along breakneck speed. We really need to stop sometimes to think about, is this a use case for AI and not automatically assume it is, because there's a lot of reasons you wouldn't want to apply AI to a situation. So for instance, I'm going to counter my own example from earlier. It's great to provide students with auto-generated summaries of a class lecture. But the issue with that is a student, the way we all learn is by really looking at complex, topics and really analyzing them with our brains. That's how we learn. And if we take that cognitive work and let AI do it, then you could argue that we're really just studying to a test, and where students aren't really learning what they need to learn by processing information. So I would say we just need to be careful about how we apply AI.
What about you, Gabriel? Any risks that you see? Anything you worry about?
Yeah, I think, there's different ways to answer this. I think on one hand, there's technical aspects, right? For the example I gave of sepsis earlier, and probably any model in medicine, you want to make sure that the data you train your model on reflects the population you're taking care of. So if there's big shifts in what patients are coming in, obviously the model you've designed will start to lose, its predictive abilities, which is inherently problematic. I think the other thing has to do much more with, kind of the implementation, though, right? And if you're working with people that don't understand or don't buy in to the use of AI for the application in healthcare, it doesn't matter how good your model is if they're not going to use it. And so that's a lot of what I do is focus on, some topics in implementation science bringing these people in actually to let them see the benefits, so that therefore they will be able to, they'll be excited about using this in patient care. And again, sepsis is one example, but it really goes across the entire spectrum of healthcare and artificial intelligence.
So we're aware of the problems. We got the risks. We got those risks, and I've seen people use AI to demonstrate prejudice. To play back to us kind of the way we see the world in an interesting way. And I'm interested in how things have to change to make AI work practically. To actually just get things done in the real world work. How do we make AI useful? Terry, when you're not playing at the weekends with talking to Trident GPT, what would your advice be for making AI a practical, useful reality?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that has to change for folks is their mindset. AI was already all around them before we started hearing anything about ChatGPT. It's already helping them, whether they like it or not, with like autocorrect, right? Our vehicles have all kinds of things in them. So acknowledging it's already a part of your life will make it a little less scary. B, then you don't force anything on anyone. I think you lead by example. You show them, like I show everybody, all the things that I've been, sometimes my prompts are terrible. And then I refine. And then I share the refined prompt with people, but I show them what I went through and that I didn't have my fingertips burned. I didn't lose any, parts of my my hair follicles, that it was just iteration and that it was actually okay with so many things that innovation brings. And so then when they see it, they start testing little things on their own. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that and try in GPT? Why don't you try that in ChatGPT or what other tools they have access to? And then they see that like nothing is caught on fire and they can keep trying. And then you start sowing all kinds of seeds of curiosity. Like, oh, you know what? This is a very frustrating thing I do. From a process perspective, how do we look at it differently? What can I do? How can AI help me in some kind of way? And then now they start trying things on their own. Now you've sown those seeds, you've not shoved it down their throats, and they are experiencing and trying and engaging, and it's all amazing. And then they tell others, and we don't gatekeep. We tell everybody all the things all the time so that everybody can learn and get better and faster and focus on the most important stuff. Because so much of what we do is like so just annoying. And when we can just focus on where our like magical brains are actually, we get to do the things like Dr. Gabriel's doing, right? Like, I mean, not that, because I'm not going to be in an emergency room, but you get the point, right? You get to do the really cool stuff. So.
I like what you're saying. So it's about creating a place where people understand and where they're excited and they step into those opportunities. I love it. What are your thoughts, Alora?
Well, from my perspective, right, I'm coming more from the process improvement sort of background. And I think if we can leverage those tools that we already have in our process improvement toolkits, it actually makes this very practical and easier for our staff and the people that we work with on campus to adopt this. And I really highly encourage starting with the process, just making the process visible, draw that process map in front of everyone, clearly identify where you plan to embed AI in that process, and then quantify for whoever the knowledge worker is that's going to operate the process, quantify what it will do for them. Maybe it'll enable the process to be faster, more accurate, maybe it's higher quality, but whatever that is, to show them this is how it's going to help make your life easier, right? We're going to take that pebble out of your shoe and it's going to feel so much better walking around all day. And I think that we have to really ask those important questions when we start this process and just start to ask ourselves, why are we using AI in this process? What will it get for us? And then present AI as complementary, right? It is going to help complement the process and the person operating that process, and just really making sure that everything is very visible all along the way. What are the things you're doing in the process that are AI enabled? What are those outcomes? And then you'll see that better user adoption, especially if you're hoping to standardize embedding AI across teams or units, because you really need everyone bought into what it is we're doing and how we're doing it.
get excited, focus on the future, come on through. I like it. I like it. I'm going to take us back down a little bit, though, where maybe we're excited and going through. But what about ethical, safety, privacy, and security issues? I mean, we've kind of hinted around some of those when we're worrying about. Dan, you look like a serious man. Can you advise us on this kind of stuff?
I'm very serious, Stephen. Yeah, this is really interesting. In my line of work, in all of our lines of work, we have to be extra careful with the privacy security concerns. So, and what I tell people is sometimes when you're quote unquote talking to generative AI like ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, you can get this really interesting situation where you feel like you're talking to a real person. It's a little creepy sometimes. I think a lot of you probably had that moment. You're like, wow, this feels like another equal human intelligence I'm talking to. And it's easy at that point to maybe share more than you should, including maybe personal information or data from your work or what have you. And I think it's important to note, like, you got to stop yourself at those moments and realize that what the data you're supplying these like kind of public AI models is really being used to inform their answers they're giving other people. So you just got to be careful. You got to kind of think about some of these public AI models as being that one friend who can't keep a secret. So your ChatGPT is your buddy who can never keep a secret. And that's why, and to give a plug to TritonGPT, that's why something like TritonGPT is so great, because it has those data and privacy security in place going in. So you always got to be careful what you tell an open AI model.
I can see Terry is nodding vigorously in the background from the HR perspective. So what do you say, Terry? I mean, I've always been like, if you wouldn't put it on Facebook, don't tell it to an AI. What's your advice, Terry?
And no offense, Stephen, let's, to stick with the current generations, if you wouldn't put it on the gram, if you wouldn't put it on Threads, if you wouldn't put it on X, right?
I don't know what any of those things are, Terry. I'm far too old.
But truly, I always stress the importance of never revealing personally identifiable information or health information for folks. In the same way that you wouldn't, even in an email to another colleague, but if you wouldn't put it on those public platforms, don't put it into any of these AI formulas, things that you wouldn't want strangers on the street to have access to. I mean, but I'll just say also, even when I'm rewriting my, always effusive emails, Stephen, always effusive. When I'm saying, dear Laura, I love you so much. TritonGPT, can you make this more professional? And then it says, so I don't tell it to say, dear Laura. I say, how do I tell a colleague that I love them so much, but in business terms? And then it changes it, as opposed to me saying, I'm going to say, dear Alora Pradenis, how do you so-and-so? But really, if things would not be otherwise divulged, you understand confidentiality and privacy in your regular day-to-day work. You wouldn't divulge this information on any public platform. These AI tools are public platforms, so don't put them there. And then operate in your curiosity and your creativity and remove everybody's personal information. And you can still figure out a bunch of things that are super helpful that get at streamlining our processes and how we think about how we do all our work.
If I get an email from you, Terry, which is very professional and saying you like me, I'll know who wrote that email. So yeah. Okay, so we're running up to time, but I really want to hear what exciting things are in the future. What's cool in the future? What are you looking forward to? Gabriel, in your world, tell us what's going to be cool in the future.
Yeah, I think, there's obvious, with the limitations that most people don't work in an emergency department or an ICU like I do. I think really a lot of the benefit and some of the fun things that we're looking at is first the incorporation of these large language models to improve efficiency for people. For instance, let's say someone has 1,000 pages in their medical record, right? Rather than going through and spending, 45 minutes to an hour to kind of digest that, right? We're one of the first places that's experimenting with large language models to do that, where we simply just ask the chatbot, right? Hey, can you summarize the key points here? And I think that's extremely helpful, particularly if you've been through our emergency departments and see how busy they are. That time saving, benefit is huge. I also think one of the things that for me at least is very, very exciting, right, is how can we use artificial intelligence to improve our diagnostic accuracy and even catch cases where you might have missed them without some kind of, some kind of second set of eyes through this AI human symbiosis that can catch some of these things. So I think that's a lot where we're going to be going. And again, I think UCSD is one of the very, very first health systems that's in that, is in that arena to start making these, these things, these dreams a reality.
So I'm going to be there. Personalized care, beautifully provided by AI, but hopefully with a doctor like you, just there, kind of being that kind of reassuring face.
Well, that's the whole point, right? It's a symbiosis, right? It's not us versus them. It's not the AI takes over, right? But working together, I think, is where the benefit lies 100%.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I speak to my doctor and my family doctor, they're always Googling what the complaints are anyway. Anyway, look, Laura, maybe it's different in the UK. Laura, rescue me. What are you excited about in the future?
I think I'm most excited about, I feel like this is such a moment. Obviously, the innovation and the tools and all the AI stuff is changing. It's very exciting, but it's a moment for people who live and breathe continuous improvement and process improvement. We are sort of the enablers of all these things. And I feel like it's such a moment for people who do this work to really pull out all those tools, to really shine, and to just take all of these new amazing tools and really understand and ask the tough questions of our communities, our campuses, our organizations, and just make sure, are we upholding our principles and values? Are we making sure to use it in the right places? Are we asking why? Just ask why? And I think we will do amazing things.
I love that. It's that human gift and using AI to enhance what we can do and improve the processes going forward. I love it. Terry, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I see all of the things with AI as an opportunity for augmented brilliance, right? Like we're some brilliant humans, and AI can just augment that brilliance. It doesn't overtake the need for the human intervention. And in the case of what we're doing with Triton GPT, there's so many opportunities. I've driven my IT colleagues crazy. Thank God they love me. But like I see a world where a person goes in and they talk about like their favorite thing to do, their dreams and wishes, and the AI through Triton GPT can say the following jobs on the job board might align with your favorite things to do. Based on your resume, you could take these following classes and have the right experience necessary for that job. And then everybody actually be living in their joy, right? So this is where I see opportunities for AI to take us, because I want everybody to be able to operate in their joy, and then AI be another place to just augment our collective brilliance.
Nice. I do get the sense there's a lot of brilliant people at UCSD. I'm not saying I'm free for employment, but okay, Dan. So my colleagues at Napier who are watching this now will get me into trouble later, but it's okay. I'll get ChatGPT to write me a nice email to get me out of it. Dan, so what are you excited about going forward?
The people at UC San Diego are brilliant, and Stephen, we're always hiring. Just want to say that. Really. So it was mentioned earlier is personalized healthcare, and so there's something related to that called adaptive learning, and so it's basically personalized learning for students. So what I'm really excited about is AI's ability to really kind of collect and analyze in real time as a student learns throughout a course. And what it does then is it can actually adjust the pace of the instruction, the difficulty, and really tailor the instruction to just be spot on to how a student learns. And that's pretty amazing stuff, because then it really improves their learning. It really is learning tailored to each individual student as opposed to just an entire course at once. And so it can also do things like direct a student who hasn't having trouble to like a tutor, or if they need to like counseling services. So there's really a huge potential to use AI to just improve student learning.
Cool. I'd just like to say thank you to the panel. It's been amazing to hear those stories, and like in the real world of healthcare, our students and how do the administration of the university. Thank you so much for your wisdom. It's been great to hear those kind of experiences. Next, though, let's look at how this will be in practice. We've heard of kind of Triton GPT and how this works. So I'm going to invite Tony Nava to join us on the stage as our panel turn off their cameras, and ask Tony to come and show us a little bit. Now, you'll probably know Tony. Tony is now internationally famous for an appalling level of dad jokes. He's also a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, is the Senior Strategic Program Manager in the Office of Operational Strategic Initiatives at UC San Diego. Say that 10 times. He runs the Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt training, recently launched the AI Essentials training, and I'm looking forward to Tony showing us what this looks like in practice. Okay, Tony, over to you.
All right, thank you for that lovely introduction. And hi, everyone. My name is, as mentioned, Antonio Nava, or Tony, if you'd prefer. I'm here to talk a little bit about Triton GPT. But as mentioned, I oversee the Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt training program at UC San Diego. So I'm here. I'm going to really focus in on how we're thinking about how this partners up with Lean. And I saw some questions in the chat. I did what I could to answer them real time about how we're partnering Lean Six Sigma and where it fits in with DMAIC and those sorts of things. Now, first and foremost, as we're thinking of processes, we tell people lead with Lean, right? So if you're looking at any process and you're trying to think about what are improvements, right? People jump to improve and that sort of thing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're creatures of habit and we need solutions quickly. But anytime we're looking at a process, we're always telling people, hey, what are the steps that are moving the ball forward? What are the value-added steps? What are the things that are important to the customer and to our outcomes? Those are the steps that we should prioritize and we should focus on, right? We should focus on eliminating wasteful steps wherever possible, right? That's a really central part of lean thinking. And there's these two other sort of things I want to talk about real quickly, automation and AI. So if there's a process and you've leaned out as much as you can, you'll be left with a set of steps, right? If those steps are repeatable, it is always A, B, C, and maybe there's a couple decision diamonds and you can always sort of plan the route. That's an opportunity for automation, right? You can put that sort of decision tree into a tool and potentially create a workflow to do that. Now, for so many of our processes, when you're looking at what the steps are, I hear a lot of, well, it depends, or it's mostly the same, but we end up changing this or that field. If you can sort of encapsulate what those flavor differences are, that's where AI might help you get there a little more directly, a little more expediently, right? So those are going to be kind of the differences. An example might be if I'm out of office and I have an out of office email reply, anyone who emails me will get an automated reply that says, here's, Tony's out of the office, he'll return on X date. Now, let's say somebody emails me about the Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt program. My answers are going to be generally the same, right? I'll tell them sort of what our schedule is and where to find more information and what the format is, those sorts of things. So my answers will be generally the same. I can't automate it because I want to put some personalization into the email or add certain details based on the calendar, that sort of thing. But it's for the most part, it's the same. So I could potentially use AI to say, AI, please help me craft an email that incorporates the current schedule into the details of the Yellow Belt program in the format of an email, right? That might be something that saves me 5 or 10 minutes crafting another email that sounds very similar, eerily similar to one that I sent last week to somebody else, right? But isn't going to be automated in the strictest sense. So when you're thinking about different processes and you're trying to think about ways that AI might help you be more efficient, I want to focus in on this word efficient. And it doesn't quite resonate with me in the way that I want it to, right? Because when people say we're gonna streamline and make this more efficient, does it really mean anything? It's kind of an exciting sounding word, but it doesn't really think about what are the outcomes you're looking for, right? So let's set that word efficiency aside for a minute. When we're thinking about lean, we're thinking about speed. When we're thinking about Six Sigma, we're thinking about accurate outcomes. But what we're really focusing on in terms of those kinds of efficiencies and Lean Six Sigma thinking is to say, who are the customers? What are the goals for our customers? What are we trying to achieve for them in this process? And let's focus on the steps that get us there. Right. So instead of thinking about how can we be more efficient in our use of AI or an application in our process, let's think about the outcomes that we're looking for the people that we serve. Right. Are we trying to be more relatable, more resourceful, more creative, more aligned, more considerate? I'll give you an example. I can use an image tool, and then I can have it read and tell me what the image is, and I can use that for alt text images on websites. Now I've met another ADA requirement, right? Accessibility requirement for our websites. Let's say I present a bunch of content. I'm really excited about it, but I've left out a whole wide array of staff members who English is not their primary language, right? Is there a way that I can take the transcripts or take a real-time text of what I'm saying and turn that into English, from English to Spanish or Tagalog or just some other language, right? That is making us more equitable, right? That means the information is not being just sort of hoarded in an unfortunately biased way, because my primary language, my shortcoming as a human, is English is my primary language. So that's one way that we could be more equitable. If I, let's say, had a presentation of information and I'm presenting to faculty members in a particular format, can I make the language, be more relatable to that audience? Can I take then that same set of slide data and can I show that to a group of high schoolers, right? So that they can be excited about what we're doing at UC San Diego. That's going to be a way that I can get to the result more quickly than me trying to just wordsmith each of these things. I can ask it to compress and edit the tone of the language to reach a different audience. So these are some of the things that are going to help us not just be more lean, right? Not just to do a step more quickly, but to be more efficient, more Six Sigma, right? To say, what are the outcomes we're aiming for, and how can we be better at reaching those outcomes? So for most folks, you might not have access to a large medical data set or what have you. For most folks, your first entry points are going to be things like ChatGPT, Triton GPT, Claude, Google Gemini, right? So for most folks, I see it this way. We're either going to be looking to do some sort of content generation. We need to create something new, or information seeking. I want to find out the steps to a thing or find out a bit of information about a topic, right? So in terms of content generation, we might be saying, I need to generate images. By the way, both of these images and the rest that you'll be seeing in this presentation are AI generated in a couple of different tools. So I might be saying, hey, generate me a piece of content, a new email, an image, what have you. Or it might be information seeking. So we might be saying, hey, I need to know more about this particular process flow and what are the steps in that process so that we can document those out and I know where to go for my Gemba walk, that sort of thing. Now with both of these though, we need to be really, really clear on what the tool is doing so that we can have the best sort of outcome in our use of it. So in your prompting journey, in your interaction with some of these tools, I want you to think of the data as a raw lump of clay. So it is an unshaped, unmolded, just mass of stuff. And each of these granulars is a bit of information, right? So it's a raw lump of clay. When I go into these tools and I prompt it, when I say, hey, please create me a statue, right? If that's what I'm trying to generate. When it creates something, it's going to have the general form of a statue. And if I'm asking for content generation, I might be really forgiving. I might say, hey, this actually looks pretty good. It's a good start, right? I still understand that it's on me as an operator to go in with a finer chisel and the detailed work to do the shadowing and the sort of extra details, right? The same can be said if you're information gathering. So if you're using this to gather information on a particular topic, the first prompt is going to be this thing. And you might look at it and go, oh, I know some of that's not right. And you might be tempted to just say, I can't trust this tool at all because it's not giving me right information on the first get-go. And you might want to throw it out. I would say, massage it. Go in, think about how you're prompting, think about the information you're giving it, give it a few different iterations, and then follow the breadcrumbs, right? See what you can do with the information. You don't want to just take the first output of any tool and say, this is factual, because as we've seen, there are things like hallucinations and biased data that can lead us astray. So we still need to go in sort of with the finer details in this metaphor, right? So if I were to go to Google, right, and I want to use this as a proof case that we shouldn't just be throwing out these tools if it gives us something inaccurate. If I go to Google and I say, what is OSI, right, Operational Strategic Initiatives, the office that I work for, and I say, what is OSI? Oh, it's Open Systems Intercommunication Model. And I'm like, in reality, it's giving us 87 million results, right, in this particular search. So that I'm not going to throw away Google, right? I've become reliant on it, dependent on it to find information. But I know my action is that I need to go further down and actually check the links and see what's going on. Now, if I go to any AI tool right now, most AI tools anyways, like ChatGPT, and I say, what is OSI? It's going to call from that same sort of Google set of information and say, oh, it's probably this open systems interconnection, thing, it's a conceptual framework. So it's going to give me that same kind of response. One of the benefits of Triton GPT is we're able to train it on UC San Diego specific data sets and information and policies so that one of our tools that we have right now is something called Blink. It's our internal sort of collection of resources and websites. So if we train, for example, our Triton GPT tool to look at those Blink pages, then when I ask it a question like, what is OSI? It's going to give me something closer to an accurate response. Right, and that's one of the great things about what Triton GPT is going to allow us to do, is it's not just going to give us a safe space to go through and look for information or input information, but if I have a question and I want to sort of theme it to UC San Diego environment and universe, I can do that. So a couple other benefits to Triton GPT. As mentioned before, it is something that is entirely secure. It's within our data centers at the Supercomputer Center. So it's something that we can be confident that the information is not going out to a third party. Another thing that I'll show you when I go to the demo is it actually links out to resources. So if we're training it at UC San Diego specific knowledge base articles, for example, when I give it a prompt and it gives me its initial response, it'll also cite the sources, the source of truth documents that it referenced in order to generate the response. So I might get the initial response and see, okay, this looks generally accurate. And I would click on the actual reference link to go and see the curated, factual content, that sort of thing. There's also an opportunity, as mentioned before, to have role-specific assistants. And let's talk about what those assistants look like right now. So right now, I want you to think of these as different gears or maybe even different people, right? The UC San Diego assistant is generally trained on UC San Diego reference documents, right? So if you ask it a question like, what is open on weekends for burritos? It'll tell you what restaurants at UC San Diego are open on weekends that have burritos. The general AI assistant is like a lot of other AI tools right now that are openly available. It sort of sets aside the UC San Diego specific context, and it can do a lot of the same kinds of things. Help me generate an email, tell me information about a particular topic. It's that sort of general writing buddy that sets aside the fact that the UC San Diego assistant really, really focuses on UC San Diego specific content, right? As mentioned earlier, the job description helper is a tool that's meant to help with job descriptions and position overviews. So it's trained on thousands of our previous job descriptions. So the process, if you will, let's process walk this. My process, not that I've created one recently, but if I were going to create a job description, I might go look at previous ones and then edit those as templates, or I might ask people who have recently hired somebody that's in a similar role, and then I might edit their version of it to bring it up to speed. The AI tool is doing essentially that. It's saying, hey, I've collected all of these for you and I've analyzed them and I'm looking for common themes. So if you need one, ask me, let me know what you need, and I'll create something for you that is based on a lot of similar titles and responsibilities. Coming soon for our staff here is also Fund Manager Coach. So again, the world of making sure that our funds are being moved in the right direction is really, really complex. Now, what this will not do at the moment is, go and tell you exactly how much is in an account, for example. But what it will tell you is the process or the steps by which you're going to go and find them. So, I might be relatively new to the space and I can enter a prompt that says, how do I check on a budget account, for this particular area? And it'll give me the steps and sort of some guidance on how to do that. So those are the different assistants. What I want to do now is I want to do a little bit of a Gemba walk, if you will. So let's take for a moment a process. This is the hiring process. I like using this one because most of us have either been hired recently or before, or we've gone through the hiring process, right? So some of the steps involved here might be writing a job description, and that might involve me looking for the resource and editing it. This might take me maybe 90 minutes of process time, my actual working time doing the thing, right? And then I need to post on a hiring site. I want to get the word out. So me going over to my LinkedIn account and re-summarizing what the job description was and trying to make it sound exciting. Maybe I languish in that because I'm not really good at writing, things that sound exciting on LinkedIn. It takes another maybe 20 minutes. I want to check on the policy for interviews at UC San Diego specifically. I want to find out what are the things I should be aware of as we're getting prepared for the interviews. And I want to remind myself what the steps were about funding for roles, because I know they recently changed, some of the process steps around that. So that might take another 30 minutes. Now I want to call out, and this came up in the question earlier, where can you apply AI as you're doing define, measure, analyze, improve, control? I think some of that's still being discovered, right? So you could, as I put in the chat, you could actually do a continuous improvement initiative that is on your DMAIC process, right? You could look at your define phase as a first bucket and say, well, what are we doing in that phase? Well, we're looking and we're creating a charter. Great, can you help me create language for the charter? We're creating a SciPoc. Can you take all of the messy conversation that we took on our whiteboard and turn that into a SciPoc format for me, right? So you can actually use AI as you're going through the DMAIC process, not just in the implementation phase once you get to the end. But let's come back to our hiring process. Let's say you're going to do these steps. You're going to write a job description. We're going to post on the hiring sites. We're going to check on policies, and we're going to look at funding for the role. So now the big reveal, let's actually look at Triton GPT. So this is what it's going to look like for folks when they access the tool. They'll be able to click this little see more button to toggle between the different kinds of assistants. So the first thing I need to do is write a job description. So let me go over to my job description helper, and it's going to ask me what role. So I'm going to put office assistant. Did I spell that correctly? It's only a recorded session with 600 people. I'll be fine. Okay, so it says, is this correct? And I'll say, yes, it's correct. And all right, let me try that again. Pivot over here. Come back to my assistants. Go to my job description helper. All right, office assistant. This is the role I am hiring for. I'd be happy to help with that. Is this correct? Oh, I got to pick one. So I'm going to go executive assistant 3 is what I'm looking for. This gives me a little more clarity on what's going on. My enter input is not working. I wonder if it's my Grammarly. How embarrassing. Okay, apologies. Here we go. There we go. Grammarly got out of the way. Executive Assistant 3. So now it's going to go through and it should tell me, please tell me any additional job description duties that are part of this role. And then I'll be able to integrate those in. I can tell it things like, some weekends required. I can say, lifting of up to 50 pounds might be necessary. Those sorts of things, hybrid work opportunities, that sort of thing. Here we go. All right. Which of these sounds best? Okay. All right, let's switch gears. This one's not behaving for us. And it's actually a really good point to bring up right now is this is still something that is sort of an experiment, right? Oh, this one finally pulled this one up. And I had added earlier, must have the ability to fly like a bird. So this is still an experiment. This is something that we're designing, that we're still getting feedback from our users from, and that we are looking at some of the different opportunities here. So let's switch gears and go on to post on a hiring site. I'm going to switch gears, and I'm going to go over to my UC San Diego, my general AI assistant. This is my general writing buddy. Let me reload my page. General AI assistant. All right, so write a post for LinkedIn to announce a new office assistant position. All right, let's take a look. Oh, look, it added little emojis at the end. Attention, all staff and students. We're excited to announce a new addition to our team, a dedicated office assistant. Okay, and then here you can see it incorporated. I, as an assistant, have been working tirelessly, but I cannot, do this on my own. It needs a human touch. Kind of a cute little kitschy thing. I'm going to go ahead and remove that from my actual post because I don't want to call out necessarily that an AI assistant helped me write this. So I'll remove this. I might also go through and say this is actually not a position that's available to students, so I might edit that out. Maybe I'll remove some of these little icons, but you can see that it at least gives me a starting point for some of these, right? Now, let's say I'm switching gears. I'm going to go check on HR policy. So I'm going to come over to this is the situation where I would come over to the UC San Diego assistant because I'm going to be asking for UC San Diego specific context, right? So I'm going to go over to the UC San Diego assistant and I'm going to say, what are policies around hiring? Oh, interview questions for new hires. Right? Now, if I were to ask this in ChatGPT or some other tool, for example, it might give me sort of, this is what the internet et al. Says you should be looking at in terms of what kinds of policies exist around hiring, right? But when I'm asking within the UC San Diego assistant, it's going to be providing me specific context that has to do with UC San Diego policies. It is not behaving with me today. Let me try this one more time. And the UC San Diego AI assistant. All right, UC San Diego assistant, come back in here. Come on. I keep having the syncing error whenever I try to download the Titanic soundtrack. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that. Dad jokes. Okay, so here we go. As it's formulating its answer, its response here, it's got here a couple of different items, but what I want to call out here is there's also these reference checks at the bottom. So the sources for the different things that it is citing as I'm reading through this response are linked. So I can actually click on each of those links and it'll take me to the document that it used to generate that response, right? So you can see how I go from asking the question, sort of starting with the position, to I've asked my really intelligent HR friend, what are the policies? Where can I go to look? In terms of what this changes for us as our process steps, it used to be that I would go through and look at my saved links. I might email Alora, one of my supervisors, and say, what are the policies around interview questions? And I might go to Terry and say, does this sound about right? This gives me an opportunity to access that information a little more expediently, right? So in terms of pre and post, right, our previous process time might have been 90 minutes. It's now going to be about 30 minutes. So I can have the initial framework. I'm still going to spend some time, some process time of mine, going through and evaluating it, adding specific details. So you can see that each of these is doing essentially what we're telling everyone, right? Whenever we go through a lean initiative, one of the things that I hear is that they're going to take our jobs. It doesn't matter what the thing is, even if it's not AI. I hear sometimes this fear that my role is at risk. Whereas what we're always trying to do is we're trying to say, well, no, we're not trying to eliminate it entirely. What we're trying to say is, can the time that you're spending be more value add, right? Can we spend more of that time moving the ball forward in a way that is effective for the goals of our process, right? So this is a great example where I'm still involved in the process. I'm still the knowledge expert in terms of like the I think it was the hybrid worker or hybrid thinking that was presented at the start of that. I love that, Neil. I think I'm going to borrow that if you don't mind. But it's really goes to show that that we're going to still be an integral part of each of these processes. But the goal here is to make it so that we can get to those value add steps more quickly. Now, one of the questions that came up in the chat and in other resources here was, how are we rolling out support content, and how are we handling some of the conversation around training and that sort of thing? So we have this class that we've created, as mentioned earlier, that's available for all staff. We've also created a version of it that is available to everyone. And it's a really high-level introduction to some of the history and the terminology around AI, and it's meant to sort of address some of the anxieties around it. One thing that's particularly fun about the class is that we used AI a lot to build the class itself, and we try to incorporate and highlight places in which we did that. So if we used AI to generate an image, for example, we called out that AI was used to generate that image, and here's the tool, and here's how it was done, and the prompt that was used. We used AI to generate the quiz questions at the end, and so we said, okay, we added screenshots at the end so people can see what that experience looked like. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now. We're also doing a lot of what we call road shows. We're getting out in front of as many people as we can, and we're showcasing the tool. We're talking through different use cases. We're looking for process improvements in real time that we can leverage as use case examples. And we're just doing everything we can to make sure that folks know, again, the primary foundational sort of thinking of, just like with Lean Six Sigma, AI is not one of the things that's going to come in and take all of everyone's jobs. We're looking at using it in ways that will help us be more lean or more Six Sigma in terms of our outcomes, to add more value add in our processes, to buy back some of that time that we can then apply to things that have been either falling off the plate or we just haven't had the sort of resources. We're asking for 3 or 4 more staff to to accompany this process. We've had increasing demand. AI is going to help us sort of meet those demands and sort of right size as much as we can and buy us some of that time back. And that's what we're seeing a lot in our initiatives. So the messaging around that is, as I mentioned, making sure that folks know how this is going to help folks and sort of demystifying some of the the science behind it. The other is to make sure that people are aware of where the data is coming from. So biased sources will provide biased outcomes. Inaccurate sources are going to provide inaccurate outcomes. So there's been a big push right now for folks to update their related websites and resources so that when the tool is being leveraged by staff, that those answers are being incorporated in the correct way. We also have some training of the model. So there's a little thumbs up, thumbs down within the tool, where if you get a response that you weren't quite anticipating, you give it a thumbs down, but we're encouraging folks to also tell us, hey, where's the source of truth, or what's the actual response, that sort of thing, so that we can start to train the model and make adjustments so that over time it gets more and more accurate. So yeah, that's that's what I have in a nutshell. Stephen, do you have any follow-up questions, or did anything rise to the top in the chat that we can address?
I have so many questions that I could ask you right now. I mean, I'm thinking about, like, you talked about when to call out AI. That's an interesting thing. I'm like, how would I know when the right time was to call out AI? I'm thinking, like, can I put personal data into Triton GPT because it's in-house? Is it okay for me to do that now, or should I not? And I'm also aware that we've only got like a minute or two to pick up those questions. And I'll give you a chance to, Tony. But what I will say is that, as well as the questions on the Q&A module that have been answered down on the bar, those questions will all be posted on the website later. So if you're waiting for questions to be answered, they'll be poked up. But right, now I've given you a beat to think, Tony. In a sentence, would you pick up on one of those two things for me?
Can you restate the questions? Because it's sort of good. So there was one about privacy.
Is it okay to put private stuff in Triton because it's in-house?
I will look to Brett and Sean for the absolution on that, but my understanding is that it is okay. The data that you're putting into the tool is not accessible by others. So if I put information into Triton GPT, other people will not. It doesn't affect the model in any way. So other people doing querying a search are not going to be able to then pull out information that I've sent into it. I'm not affecting the model by putting a prompt into the tool. Brett, Sean, did you want any context to that?
No, I think that's good. I think our general guidance is that we allow for data up to the P3 level for categorization on our data classification according to the UCUP guidelines. So yes, up to P3 data.
Perfect. Thank you.
So for UCSD people that understand that, that's the word from Brett, who is the person who knows. Okay, do you have a thought about how we should reference AI? I mean, I know that my library colleagues have been working with referencing formatting in terms of academically for AI. Is there a touchstone as to whether or not you should say you use an AI to create the content? Is Terry wrong getting an AI to write a thank you note and not crediting it?
I don't think it's wrong at any point in time. Should I reference Stephen Yorkstone when I reach out to him for help on my content, on my slides? I think it's a nice
always
thing to do.
Systematically.
Yes,
definitely.
No. And that's kind of maybe part of the way we need to think about it is, will our audience feel duped or some way misled if we don't call it out in those moments? We did an application review process, and people were submitting things that were very clearly ChatGPT generated, and they didn't bother to even edit the responses. That's a situation in which I feel like I'm being duped as a person on the other end of that process. Whereas if I'm generating a class, a Lean Six Sigma class, and my images are AI generated, I don't feel like I personally don't believe my customers would mind.
I have a friend who says if it feels like it's sneaky, it probably is.
I love that.
That would be my heuristic. So thank you so much, Tony. It's been great to hear that and to see what Triton GPT looks like, and I hope to come back and see what it looks like some more as it grows on. That's it. Time is against us. We're nearly done. So I would firstly like to say some thank yous. Thank you to all of our sponsors who've enabled the event today, and of course, Process Palooza. I hope that you'll be all there. And also, I'd like to say thank you all the sponsors you can see on the screen just now who've contributed to the session today. That's the information you need about Process Palooza to sign up for the information that we have there. Of course, Process Palooza will be taking place in August the 21st to 22nd, 2024. You can register from the week of April the 15th. So get your approvals and travel plans ready and stay tuned for the announcement. And again, we'd once again like to thank our gracious sponsors for helping us keep the event costs low, because actually there's a whole lot of work that's gone in to organize an event like this. And of course, there's many people, the team who've supported today, and I'd like to say a personal thanks to all of them for the work they've done organizing it, and you know who you are. So for the latest Process Palooza 2024, visit the website at processpalooza.ucsd.edu. We'll be posting the recording of today's webinar on that website by the end of the week. And while you're there, make sure to check out the debut episode of the Process Palooza podcast. Episode 1 centers around the evolution of lean thinking in the age of AI. You'll be able to hear more from the amazing Neil Sahota, me actually talking about content and my experience with AI, as well as UCA San Diego CIO Vince Kellen. So don't miss the episode. It expands on a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today in more of a kind of a long form, kind of discursive format, about podcast stuff. But watch out for new episodes of the podcast, which will be released every month, leading right up to the Process Palooza in August. If you'd like to stay on top of the latest news, visit the Contact and Stay Connected page on our website to sign up for the monthly newsletter. You'll find links to the LinkedIn page, the YouTube channel, and the SoundCloud playlist there, featuring episodes of the Process Palooza podcast each month. And if you have any questions, you can, of course, contact us at processpalooza@ucsd.edu. And I've just heard there will be 3 add-on training and certifications at the Process Palooza event. Have a look in chat for information and a link to click where you'll be able to get those too. So that's us. Thank you so much for joining us for the Process Palooza AI webinar. It's been a delight to host you. Thank you again to our keynote speaker, Neil Sahota, our demo master, Tony Nava, and all of the panelists for sharing their knowledge with us. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you at Process Palooza 2024.